What's up, everybody? I'm former quarterback Malik, and if football, sports interviews, and having a good time interests you, then make sure to click the like and subscribe button as it really does help support this channel, and it also makes sure that you guys never miss a new video. How's everyone doing? And welcome back to another episode. And I already know some of the Miami fans are going to say, "Why in the hell are you wearing a Georgia shirt?" So, for the people that don't know, I actually was on staff at Georgia for 1 year. It was the year before they won the first Natty with Kirby. I was there during that COVID year, so I got a lot of love for Georgia as I was on staff. Love Kirby, love the gang. So today I'm wearing the Georgia stuff, and the first topic we're going to talk about is going to be Georgia football. So first, I want to say go dogs. I know they love saying that up there. At first, it didn't really catch on to me, but now that I'm kind of away, I kind of just miss hearing randomly go dogs yelled on campus. So I'm excited about this team. I think that they have a chance to go for a three-peat. Obviously they won the last 2 years. We know that, a lot of the defense is gone. Some of the offensive key pieces are gone, and especially the quarterback. So I really believe in Carson Beck. This guy is smart. This guy knows football. And lastly, he has great fundamentals. When I was there, I would say out of all the guys there, he probably had the best fundamentals out of all the quarterbacks as a freshman, and I think the biggest thing was him was just learning the offense, learning, SEC defenses, understanding, how to mentally process stuff. And I think he's going to have a very, very big year. I will say this though, losing Monken hurts, and not necessarily from a play calling aspect, because Bobo is going to do a good job of play calling and making sure that he puts Carson in the best situation. Their OC is going to do a good job of putting Carson in the best situation possible. But the biggest thing that I think that Monken really helped with was the receiving core. When I was at Georgia, they had Cortez Hankton. Obviously, I know him, good receivers coach. But, Monken would help a lot of the times, especially when, people would go to special teams drill. So a lot of times, the position coaches also have a requirement to, help out with special teams. But sometimes not all the players, especially like, the time George Pickens, didn't necessarily be involved with special teams. So, a lot of times you have the receivers on the sideline, like catching extra or, maybe doing flexibility. But what Monken did was Monken took the receivers that, currently went in that special teams group, and he would do route specific stuff with them, whether it was red zone stuff that I working on today, whether it was a route that, the kids struggled with earlier in practice or maybe the week before. So to me, it was that little edge, that little like helping, guys get slowly better and better, especially the receiving core, because if you don't trust your receivers, it is very hard for a quarterback to be confident to throw good footballs and things of that nature. So, I think in that aspect there will be some let off. I'm really looking forward to see how Georgia responds, especially at the receiving core, because we saw how electric they have been in the last couple of years. And I'm wondering with Monken leaving, will that side decline? So that's one thing that I'm at least looking for Georgia. But we're going to go ahead and talk about their schedule. I think there are a couple games here that there's probably two that worry me. And not necessarily think that they worry me as in like they could lose, but I think it could be really close. So UT Martin obviously win, Ball State obviously win, South Carolina little shaky. Obviously this will be Carson's first big game. The good news is that it is at home, and so I think that the Georgia crowd will have a lot of effect. Obviously, I think the defense will play great. So I have this being close at first. In the second half, Georgia really pulling away, Carson Beck settling into the game, and you guys beating them probably by like 10-14. UAB at home again, I think that's a beating. Auburn, a little bit, I think they're going to be a lot better. They added Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, and I know he's not the best player, but you add experience to a pretty decent team. Obviously Robin Anderson is going to be a guy that probably gets some playing time as he is electric himself. So I think with it being at Auburn, Carson Beck's first big road game, I could see, the crowd of Auburn kind of affecting him, especially early. So I think this one could be a very, very tight game. Kentucky, I think you guys beat them by 10-14. Vanderbilt, I I just hope Georgia doesn't sleep on them. Obviously, what happened a couple years ago when Georgia went up there, but my biggest thing with them is go up there, beat them, leave. Florida, I think that I just don't think Florida's ready, at least from a quarterback position. I think it'll be very interesting. I know they do have a lot of talent around, so I do think it'll be a close game. But I have you guys beating them by somewhere between like 3-10. Missouri, I have you guys beating them probably by like 7-10. I think they're going to be pretty good. I do like Jake Garcia. I like some of the receiving core that they have. I think they're more underrated when people give them, especially on the defensive front side. I think they're going to have a really, really good defensive front. Shout out to my dog Unc. George is over there, so he played ball with me at Miami. So they're gonna have a really, really good fucking defensive line at Missouri. So I think that they could give you guys some fits, but I don't think overall they'll give you guys too much, especially later on in the game. So I got you guys beating them by probably 7-10 as well. But Tennessee, and I got you guys beating them by 7-10 as well. But next is Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss could be sneaky good. I think it's very interesting to see how their quarterback plays out. I think this is a team that will probably score a lot of points, particularly versus you guys, just because of Lane Kiffin, how he operates, super mastermind. But I have this being a shootout probably in like to mid to high 30s. And I have it somewhere being like maybe like 28-35, somewhere around there. I think it'll be a really, really good game at home for the Georgia Bulldogs. The last one, or the second to last one, is Tennessee. So this one's at Tennessee. I don't know if you guys saw when Tennessee played Alabama at Tennessee and what happened there. Um, I I hope that doesn't happen, but it could, man. Tennessee, they're going to have Joe Milton. That guy is a cannon for an arm. It's going to be late in the season. Obviously, both of you guys should have really good records going into it. And I think this is going to be the make or break game for both you guys. I think that, with it being at Tennessee, it definitely gives Tennessee the advantage. But I think at the end of the day, Georgia has a better defense. And so it really will come down to, can Georgia's defense hold Joe Milton from not scoring, 30, 40 points, because that guy can run, that guy can throw. He spent a lot of time with Peyton Manning, which means he really is going to start understanding how offenses function. Obviously, last year we saw what he did in the bowl game. So I think Tennessee is probably the most scariest team that you guys have. I think, they could potentially be a top 2 team, top 3 team, just with some of the talent that they have around Joe Milton. But it could be super interesting. Obviously, Georgia Tech, I have you guys beating them by like 21-30. So that's where I really have it. I have Georgia really going 11-1, maybe at worst 10-2. I think Auburn could be a sneaky game with it being at Auburn, and obviously Tennessee at Tennessee could be another real sneaky game because both of those teams are really good. And Auburn's always known for their defensive line, and that's something that Georgia's always known for their offensive line. So I think it could be something interesting that happens over the next. And I think that could be a really interesting battle that some people won't talk about, but for me in the SEC, the trenches win. You got to win in the trenches. When Georgia was winning their 90s, the defensive line, offensive line, they had a whole bunch of first rounders on both sides, and I think that's where the Auburn side can really give the Georgia offensive line some fits. So next, we're gonna go into Aaron Murray talking about, can USC win a Natty? Me personally, I don't think so. I think it will turn into what similar what happened between Baker when he played Georgia. It's going to be a high scoring game. He's going to have all these accolades. He's going to have all these beautiful robes, but I just don't think that the USC defense can hold up versus an SEC or even like Ohio State, the weapons they have. Obviously, I think Bear Alexander is a huge addition, helps the D line, applies pressure, especially out in the Pac-12. I think they really need that. But when you talk about come back to the SEC, where you're going to have 4 and 5 star linemen going across, and they're going to be able to just say, hey, slide, we're double teaming Bear the entire game, or one-on-one, maybe even the back of the tight end stays in to help. I think it's going to make it really, really hard on USC. Unless they have, 1 or 2 guys on the D-line that steps up. Again, for you to win a national championship, you got to win up front. You got to have the nastiest guys up front pushing the pile, making sure that they reestablish the line of scrimmage. And, obviously I haven't watched much USC football, but, for me, they've just been known for their offense, for Caleb Williams putting up points, giving up, 35-48 is like their score. So I don't think you're going to be able to beat a really good team if you can't play defense. So next, we're going to go into, the University of Miami. This guy, Peter Warren, did an article with Alonzo Highsmith, and I really liked it, and the stuff I really like about it was, he talked about, Alonzo picking Miami because Mario was there, because he knew the culture Mario was going to bring. He knew, how important recruiting was. He knew that this guy is relentless. And like, when you can pull someone from the NFL, especially someone that's getting paid a lot of money, that actually has an off season, because when you're in college football, there is no off season. Your off season is recruiting high school kids between the ages of 15 all the way up to 18, maybe even younger than that for some of these programs. In the NFL, you're only worried about the draft eligible guys. And then, obviously Alonzo was doing, a lot of draft eligible guys, but it's still not as many as he's going to be doing 3 classes with hundreds of kids all across the country. You know what I mean? So that's where you're like, you're also sacrificing your time. And then the last one, the recruiting aspect, obviously it's a lot different recruiting a high school kid that, might not know a lot about football than it is recruiting, a college kid that's 22, 23 years old that should know a lot about football, and you can drill him and you can ask him, every question in the book. Like, some of these young kids coming out of high school, might not know everything about football, but it's going to take them a year or two. And then that's where it's like, the a lot of stuff that Alonzo had to do, he had to shift his mindset and how he programmed a lot of stuff. Obviously, I think he knows, height, weight, talent, things like that to look for in kids. But the mental aspect was probably something that he definitely had to adjust to. With spending so many years in the NFL and then coming down now dealing with kids that are under the age of 18. So, for Mario to be able to convince him to come here, that to me just shows me, how much influence, how much, people believe in Mario. And I know sometimes from the outside looking in, when you're not around someone, when you don't understand, how things are working on the inside, it's very easy just to cast judgment. And so I think you guys hear it all the time. Not only are the players working hard, but the coaching staff is working hard. They're trying to recruit. When you hear about Saban and Kirby and the way they talk, like the number one thing that they focus on is recruiting. Like their job is to bring in someone better than what they brought in last year. And if I can consistently do that each year, then I'm going to become a better and better team because I'm always going to have good coaches. And I think that's one aspect that, sometimes as a fan, we just look at records. We don't say, hey, are the kids getting better? Are the kids improving? Are we moving in the right direction? When you hear a lot of like the big name guys that have been around Miami football, that have been around great football, whether it's at Miami, whether it's in the NFL, they all talk about the same thing, the process that they're making. We also got to understand too, like when I first came to Miami, there was no indoor. Rick had to donate money for the indoor. There wasn't even a nutrition center. Like the nutritionist was literally doing nutrition out of the weight room closet. Like there was a lot of stuff that we did not have that when I was at Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn, like when I went to other visits, like they had all of it. And it low-key really pissed me off. But I was like, I want to be in Miami and I love it. And now you see that Miami is dropping $300 million into a complex. Also, this Georgia was on the second complex. Like Georgia already had a big indoor. They literally shifted everything over to make a bigger indoor, a bigger stadium, not really stadium, but a bigger place for the football team to engage and really recruit. And that's one thing that I'm finally happy that the university's doing. That's something that sometimes it's out of the coach's hands. They can't force the university to donate all that money. And obviously, the university did a great job at building up their U Health. That's what they're known for. That's where all the money's coming from. So I think it was a very long-term strategic plan by the university. Obviously, I think it was so unfortunate for some head coaches and things like that. But, you're talking about a guy that understands the process and the university now that is completely backing him up by building a new facility, by giving him the money that he needs. That's where a program gets good because you can say what you want, but go look back at when Alabama didn't have Nick, when they were struggling, and go look at the financial situation now when Alabama has Nick Saban, they're winning, they're constantly playing in big bowl games, they got kids on national TV every week. Look at the financial income that the University of Alabama made just by the football team being good. So, there's a lot of stuff on that aspect that I think that, as fans, me, myself, like I said, I was a fan before a player. Like we don't really understand what goes on to the day to day, but obviously, I have some connections to the university and obviously I read a lot of stuff that happens. And so I don't know what this season will hold. It could be good, bad, ugly. I really don't know. But the good news is we're at least doing the right things with the right people in the right process. I feel like in the past we've done some shady stuff or we just didn't have people that knew the right process to do. When you talk about a guy that has been at Alabama under Nick, so he knows it. He showed us he can do it at Oregon. Now he's just trying to implement it here. And obviously, if you go look at our facilities compared to Oregon, we're in different spots. Like, let's just be honest. And so I think that Miami's understand that. And now we're trying to upgrade. So the same way that, the university is trying to upgrade and, build, we also got to give Mario that same time to build too, because he's building right along with them. So next, this guy, Nick Kosko, hope I didn't mispronounce your last name, man, but, he wrote an article about, could the possibilities of Braelon Allen be underutilized? I personally do not think that Braelon Allen could be underutilized. Obviously, I think that his rushes could drop. Maybe he's used to running, 25, 30 times a game, and it could drop down to 15, 20. I think that technically could be a good thing because he will be a really good back in the NFL. He will play in the league. And so if you cannot have him get beat up throughout the year, I think that helps your team. Secondly, I think they're going to be more creative when giving him the ball in space. I remember watching Wisconsin in the past, a lot of I formation, single back. He's in between tackles. Obviously, he can do that. But if this guy can show, like, he can be like a Duke Johnson type player where he can catch out the backfield, run simple slants, at an empty, maybe even get integrated into the screen game. That, to me, is where Wisconsin can really explode their offense because you can only be so explosive in the run game, especially when you're eating up so much clock. When you're talking about adding in the pass game, that Phil Longo is going to want to add, I think it really, really helps, having a good back. Not only can run it, but can catch out the backfield that, hey, if you go man coverage, I dare you to go man because we'll run everybody off and we'll run a tailback option, which is what we used to do back in the day with Mark Walton. It was literally called top, which means tailback option. And all it was 4 verts on the outside, the tailback would run up and he would do an option. And we would wait for you to run cover one and we'd hope it. And then it's one-on-one. It's one of our best players, Mark Walton, who was one of the best on our team, versus your middle linebacker, outside linebacker. Who's better? Who's more athletic? And I think when you talk about Braelon Allen versus most linebackers, that's a win. That's a matchup that you want. And so that's where I feel like, Wisconsin's offense will change, and he might not be, have the crazy numbers that he had last year, but I think that he's going to be more impactful with the way that they use him throughout the year. So next, we're going to move into our NFL section. And the big thing I want to talk about is, can DeAndre Hopkins help the Pats if he goes there? So one, I think yes. I think it'll be a huge pickup. When you guys go back and watch Mac Jones at Alabama, he had a bunch of studs. He had guys around him that can make plays. You hear OC's talking about quarterback is a dependent position. We are dependent on our offensive line to block. We are depending on our receivers to run the right route. Then we also depend on our receivers. Hey, if we throw you a good ball, you also have to catch it. And not saying that the guys last year from Mac didn't do that, but like when you have DeAndre Hopkins, you feel like you can throw him any ball, good, bad, ugly, and he's going to catch it, or at least make sure the defensive back does it. And I think that is what Mac needs. He's still a young quarterback. I know he's played in the league for 2 years, but you're talking about a second-year guy that needs help. This is one of the reasons, that was a huge reason why Tom left, was the fact that, it was a struggle to have top-rated receivers with Bill, the way he organizes contracts, different things like that. So I know that DeAndre is a little bit out of, probably Bill's comfort zone, especially with the money that he probably wants. But, when you're talking about, you got a guy that, Mac is athletic, but he's not the most athletic guy. To me, he is a traditional pocket passer that has a little bit of savviness to him. Like, he will make people miss. He will run. He is more athletic than I think people give him. But to me, he's still like a great assist point guard. Like, he's going to come away. If he played basketball, he's going to have 20, 25, 30 assists going throughout the game, making sure that he's dishing the ball out, throwing real accurate passes. But he's going to need guys around him that can catch and shoot. Guys that, hey, once I get it, I make this guy miss and I go drive the lane. And so that's what DeAndre Hopkins kind of adds to, Mac Jones's game. Is the guy's confident, the guy's a competitor, so he's going to want to get better. And he is a leader, man. When you're talking about leading Alabama and, being a rookie and, leading the Pats way it is rookie year, he's a leader. Now I just think they need to add playmakers around him that makes it easier on him. Sometimes it is a lot. You're in the NFL, you're the face of a team, and you feel like I have playmakers, but you look at other teams, they have Kadarius Toney, they have Kelsey. Obviously, they added on the tight end as well, but I think having that number one receiver that is your go-to guy can really, really help settle down Mac Jones and make him feel a lot more comfortable in the offense. So the last thing we're going to talk about is, can Kansas City win a Super Bowl again? Me personally, I think so. I think when you talk about Patrick Mahomes, he's getting better and better. I don't really see him regress. Maybe he struggles in the beginning like he did last year, and then kicks it back up. I think this guy is a clutch player. I think he's a playmaker. I think he's someone that, when you need him in big moments, he makes plays. I think their big three is going to be Rice, the rookie that they just drafted at SMU. The guy has really good hands and he has good body control. Obviously, KT, super electric. That'll be their replacement for Tyreek Hill. And then obviously, we got Kelsey, man, the tight end, the guy that really makes things happen. One stat that ESPN talked about earlier was that 25% of their starters on defense was rookies. And that's big. That's a lot of young guys playing. You're talking about guys that are now more confident, guys that now understand the defense more, guys that, have played against offense. So they're going to start understanding what people like to run. And then you're also talking about guys that are now going to be able to, really, really be impactful because, from year one to year two, you should grow. Obviously some people digress, but for the most part, people grow. And I think that when you're talking about a team that just won a Super Bowl with 25% rookies, now that team, especially on the defensive side, is going to be better. And so I think that they're still a team to beat. I think they're going to be a very hard team to beat. I am very interested to see, how Kansas City does, and if they can go back and win. So I do appreciate everyone for watching. I would say that we have 2 big announcements coming up. So one, I have a couple interviews with some receivers coming up pretty soon. Probably would be next week as I got a lot of stuff doing this week. But what I really want to do this week is, I saw on, the late night show with Josh that he did an interview, with Coach Dawson. I would love to break that down. I've already watched it once. There's some really, really key points that I don't think people understand. When Dawson talks about the quarterback, when Dawson talks about certain things about the aspect and how it operates, I don't know if everyone understands that, but that's something that I personally want to go through and kind of highlight different points that he made and say, this was stuff that I agree with. This is stuff, that I wish that I would have had when I was a player, different things like that, I am super excited about Dawson. I think that he is the right guy for Tyler Van Dyke and the rest of the quarterbacks. And I think the biggest worry for me isn't, can his offense succeed? The biggest worry to me is that will he leave in the next year or two? So that's some stuff we're going to talk about in the next episode. So don't miss it as we break down, Coach Dawson's talk.